All right, we have 2 more minutes. And again, if you're at Pivotal, I am in Scorpius. So feel free to come meet me. Oh, this lice cap is amazing, Dr. Nick.
Dr. Nick gave you lice too.
I know. So well said. I mean, I kept on thinking lice. Why would I call something lice? But I guess it makes sense now.
Now you've got the itch.
Yes.
So it's a good idea to stay away at least 2 meters of Dr. Nick for the moment. Because he gives us all lice.
That's right.
Hey, what are you doing here?
If you wear
We'll meet remotely.
You're in Toronto also? Or in Dublin? In Dublin. Oh, excellent.
This is public, right?
Yeah, it is public.
Curious what it's all about.
Yeah, it's actually being recorded as well.
just be careful. It's not a public beach, it's just public.
It's community, and actually we just discussed that the calls are being recorded and posted on YouTube. So you do have to be careful what you say if you don't, if you're worried about, things in a public record.
Mind my words.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that's an issue for you. It's more for me, Wayne, Dr. Nick. You might want to be careful. All right, we got 1 more minute, and it looks like we have a fair amount of people. So this is excellent. I can't even count right now. I think it's over 25, 30. So this is good. Okay, and then we have some questions as well. So this is good. Since we have a lot of people, maybe we won't wait the 5 minute that we usually wait. So let's just give everybody 1 more minute. Hey, we have Yui here as well, so this is good. So I'll start in about 45 seconds. And if you have questions, don't forget, put them on Slack. I see a couple already. So this is good. All right.
I just wanted to say hi. It's Benjamin from France, GSTEC, for the first time attending the CAB. Very glad to be among you guys. Hello.
Yeah, bienvenue, Benjamin.
Merci.
You'll see some French here and there. I'm just practicing my French. All right. Okay, so it's 8:01. We'll get started. I mean, this is wonderful. We have a great turnout today, and we'll just get started. I think the first item on the agenda, since we have quite a bit of things, is we've switched to the Zoom thing, and it's working out well. So I don't see any objections. So that's going to be the way it is. The other thing I mentioned before we officially started is that now the calls are being recorded. And Wayne is helping move them to YouTube. So if you go to YouTube Cloud Foundry channel, you'll see the last call. So this call will also be on YouTube. So this means you may want to be careful what you say if you care about, the fact that there's a permanent record, right? As I mentioned,
my singing and dancing last time is immortalized.
Right, exactly. And I say this mostly for myself because I've said some things maybe I should probably be careful about. And of course, you represent your company, so what you say also, represents your company. It's in the record. Let's put it this way. You know what to do. So with that said, let's get. Oh, one more thing I want to say before we start is that we now have quite a bit of presentation. So I said this in the past that we're looking for people to present. And, Stock and Wayne basically seems to have like an unlimited number of things that they can talk about, which is fantastic. But we also want to make sure other people get a chance. So right now, for next time, we have 2 presentations from Pivotal, actually. And this is very exciting. So we'll see how we can either work out, those two plus one more, or we'll figure it out. Of course, this week we have a presentation from Auto. So other companies, if you have presentation, just ping me or put it on the Slack channel, and then we'll figure out a way to schedule you.
And if not, we're always happy to be your plus one.
I know. So I'm super excited about this. All right, so we'll get started. So first thing is CFF update. I don't know if Chip or anybody from the Cloud Foundry Foundation on the call wants to update. You might want to unmute yourself. I'm not sure it mutes you automatically, but just in case. No? All right. I guess that I'll mention a couple of things that I know since I'm part of the committee putting together the program for the summit. I can tell you that there is over 200 submissions, I believe, because I am reviewing 170, and I know there's more. So I can't speak more detail about the submissions, but this is very, very good. I mean, it's pretty much the past 2 days, that's all I've been doing. Kind of sad, but that's the fact. And what's interesting is the variety of different submissions. So this is good. So the program should be very exciting for this summit. I don't have anything else to say, except that if you are a contributor, obviously if you're joining this, you're probably a contributor. You can register for free, as in before. Ping me and I'll send you the code. I think Chip already posted it, so if you go back in the history of the CAB channel, you'll see that. So there is no excuse. Obviously, you have to travel here, but and immigration has to let you in too. So sorry about that. But otherwise, join us. Any comment from anybody from CFF or wants to add something?
Not now. I know it's on YouTube.
Hey, Jules.
So additionally, I believe there was a track opened on Cloud Foundry for OpenStack Summit as well.
Oh yeah, this is very true. So you can submit yourself there. I think generally, again, I can't speak about the details of the submissions, obviously, but there is a wide variety of things. So it will be a very exciting summit, I think. Maybe the best we've had. Okay, so unless there are any comment, let's move to the projects. Michael, did you want to say something? Michael? No. All right. You just show up very big on the screen here. That's why I'm wondering. Oh, to greet you. Yeah. Yes, I see. That's probably why I'm seeing people. All right. Oh, I can see everybody now. Okay. So the other thing we try to do maybe in 10, 15 minutes is to get project highlights. So sort of the core projects. We have Eric here from Diego, so I don't know if you want to mention, and then you.
Yeah, sure. So let's see. Past month on Diego, we've been continuing with various aspects of work in extracting ourselves from having console as a dependency. So we're pretty far on running route emitters locally on the cells to prevent them from having a lock that they hold in console. I think we're not quite ready to declare that non-experimental yet. We're getting a little more feedback from production environments at scale. And then there's still more experimental work to move some of the other component locks into something that's managed by the Diego database. So that's not quite ready to go yet. And let's see, we've been doing some work to help us integrate with the GrudaFest project out of London, which is going to be the new component that manages all of the image layers for containers on the cell, replacing stuff built in to sort and run C. So that's nice to see that progressing. And we've also been integrating against the new Logator API with their gRPC interface. Again, that's something to opt into, and I don't think they've fully stabilized on their API yet, so that might not be ready to go yet, but you can at least try it out for, I think, app logs and container metrics on an opt-in basis. on the cell.
Excellent.
And then we have a track to do a pass to the other Diego components to start using that new API.
Okay, very exciting. So any question for Diego, or I guess some of the things that Eric just mentioned here? No. Okay, so one other, I guess one other project to core project is obviously BOSH, and I know Dimitri joined, and he actually will be one of the ones presenting next time. Believe it or not, I figured out how to get Dimitri to present. So
what?
I know. You can ask him.
Dimitri, is this your first public performance?
So give us your highlights.
No.
Yes.
So what's been going on in BOSH, DK?
Let's see. So we are continuing to work on config server integration, and that's I believe is almost there. I believe Dan at some point deployed CF deployment with proper CredHub integration instead of using the CLI functionality. That's really there mostly for as a temporary workaround. So CredHub integration will be soon documented and announced, I guess, I believe in the next major BOSH release. We've been also moving around lots of repos. So for those who haven't noticed, the stem cell building stuff have moved into their separate repo, and release notes for the stem cell versions will soon be moving there as well. Of course, BOSH.io will continue to be updated, but all of the stem cell builder bits is now separated. We just kicked off work to do the DNS stage 2, which will bring us closer to links plus DNS support, and then that will hopefully unblock some of the other teams who are trying to remove usage of console and some of the other technologies that they may be using in place of it. Let's see. What else is interesting? Yeah, that's the high level. This kind of a big topics involved. Of course, CLI v2 is about to be announced. We, I believe, have one remaining story to switch over BOSH acceptance test to use that version of the CLI. And then I have, looks like some emails to answer to as well. I believe that's pretty much the level overview. There is, of course, a variety of other tinier things like, SAP Marco proposing to add, set disk metadata CPI calls such that the auditing of IaaS resources is a lot easier. And there is, of course, some work between IBM and SAP that's been going on in discussion to do a certain feature called OS reload. Max, maybe you can talk about that if you want to.
Sure. No, that's fine. I think for people that don't know, in software, we had a need for reloading OS versus just changing stem cells by creating new VMs. So that makes it a little bit better for software, and turns out that SAP has a similar need. So Marco, Dimitri, and I have been chatting about this, so you might see this coming up as well.
So this is reloading it fresh on the existing machine?
Right, so you keep the same VM and you just reload the operating system with the new stem cell.
Hey, we should do hot patching after that if we're going to go all the way back in time.
Yeah. So it is controversial. So obviously we'll put a proposal out so people can comment. But it's helpful.
I'm excited by the changing the order of the feature of the taking down so that we can get that, so bringing up the new machine, populating full of stuff, and then taking the old machine down and then switching disks over. whenever that feature comes out. That'll be very exciting.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if you're joking or not, but it's a similar approach. I mean, part of it is.
I heard from Toronto that feature was being discussed and perhaps worked on. So I'm not sure if that's exactly the same, but that.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is similar to that. Yeah.
Joking? I don't joke.
No.
That much.
No, but in some cases, certainly for some cloud, reloading the operating system is a feature, first-class feature, and it is faster than creating a new VM and, obviously loading the image on that new VM. So give or take. It depends on which IaaS you use. There's also other reasons as well, but we'll share that with everybody. But if you're interested, definitely reach out to Dimitri or myself or Marco, and we can add you to the discussion. Okay, so this is BOSH. Lots of good things going on there. I'll probably be joining them in a month or so to help out. So this is exciting. Okay, so maybe if no questions, Yui, do you want to update? I don't know.
There's CAPI. I don't know. Like, I suppose we could highlight the work that we're doing to eliminate a number of the bridge components in combination with Diego. So that is progressing along. I think in the probably CF release 255, we're hopefully eliminating all the ones that we've targeted, and so that secures that communication from Cloud Controller to Diego. Let's see. Other things for CAPI, they're looking now at prioritizing the work to GA the V3 related app related endpoints, and working with the CLI team, or starting to work with the CLI team on how to expose these building blocks of the V3 endpoints. So I'm hopeful that by Q2 of this year, those will all be GA. I think that's all the updates for CAPI. There's a number of efforts across all of the runtime projects to move ourselves away from console and etcd. So we do hope to eliminate our dependency and usage of console and etcd across all of the core runtime components.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen this since I was, working here at Pivotal for a few weeks, and pretty much all the teams. I guess I'm just echoing what you just mentioned, is they're all trying to do this big effort, which I'll give a free plug for my friend Jules from IBM. He did a nice little blog post on Medium where he talked about why you shouldn't try to just build complex stuff. And in some ways, that's the wrath of this. Let's have this huge shiny thing called etcd and console. Let's use it.
I think that blog post was a rant against regular apps using it. Like, if Cloud Foundry turns out not to need console, maybe you don't. Maybe console is not for you. That's basically the rant.
Yeah. Anyways, the point here is that there's a big effort to remove it. It doesn't mean that it's bad. Maybe it has very good applications in some cases, but for our purposes, it seems like it wasn't working out. So, okay. I don't know if there are any question for pretty much the main core projects yet. No. Okay. So.
The first question is applicable.
Oh yeah. All right. Thank you. So the first question, I'm not sure who would it, but I'll read it out. So security is a great thing. obviously. However, there's a lot of problems with migrating to this sometimes when there's a new secure environment. So what's the plan for easing the pain of mutual TLS upgrade dense? I don't know. I mean, I saw David Sabetti sent an email on CF Dev where he discussed maybe some of that. I guess, you know, it's like going to the airport. I mean, you have to go through security and it's a pain in the ass, right? So I'm not sure there's a better way.
Security about the fact that if you have a long-running production environment and you're upgrading these things, a lot of times there's like little gotchas that are not in the release notes, for example, like the new DNS entries for the cells, the rep and stuff like that, and the auctioneer, like the, you know, oh, gee, by the way, your certificates better be star.cell.service.cf.internal, not the old Diego auctioneer or BBA, whatever they used to be. And then suddenly your production cells are all drained on a live system because the auctioneer can't auction anything, and it's like, you know, the elections are failing and stuff like that, and then you turn white and your heart is like, and and then the logs are great for developers, but the logs are so opaque that like you have no idea what the root issue is, and it takes you another 8 hours to figure out, oh, it's because of that kind of pain.
Yeah, I wonder if this wouldn't be mitigated by more people testing, because it feels like Pivotal does a fair amount of the tests, and then they release somewhat, the teams release, and then people find the pain. So if we all test it at the same time, maybe we would find some of that pain, right?
I know on the Diego team, we've actually been very careful to document those steps in the release documentation, both the metadata that you need in those certificates. There's a section on TLS configuration, and there are separate documents on how to upgrade, say, the auctioneer and the cell reps to have secure communication.
I have to say, I kind of feel like there's a automation thing missing. You shouldn't have to read release notes and do stuff to get from one manifest to another.
But we're getting there, aren't we? I mean, with the CF deployment idea and Thread Hub and everything, I mean, hopefully most of this goes away soon.
Yes.
Right. I guess I feel that should be the aim. The aim should be when you go from one release to another, that should be an automated process as much as BOSH deploy is an automated process.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, I'm glad you guys are mentioning this because, and he's not here, but I've confirmed with him multiple times, David Sabetti, who is the PM for CF deployment, I've run into him multiple times and I've asked him, hey, do you want to present? And he's like, not quite ready. And the last time I saw him, he said, I might be ready, but we couldn't.
That's good enough.
Time. I know. So I will make sure I track him down. I mean, he's a great guy.
Let me add a little more clarity around this particular pain point. This particular pain point is for long-running systems that were running CF release, trying to migrate to CF deployment style. Between the release notes on CF releases release and where the other documentation are, it's not all put together clearly. So there's going to be a lot of people finding a lot of pain and asking a lot of help questions on those things because of that migration process specifically. So it's not like migrating CF release to CF release like version.
Right.
It's the whole paradigm shift into the from CF release to CF deployment that's actually really painful.
So one of the big milestones for the release integration team and David Sabetti in particular is to migrate PWS from using CF release to CF deployment. And we're hoping to get a lot of learnings from that and documentation out of that. So I don't believe right now we would recommend switching over from CF release to CF deployment until all of that's really ironed out and we've got great processes around that. Also, I know David Sabetti's trying to be a little more rigorous about asking teams to update their release notes before publishing any of the final releases. So we're if you continue to see gaps there, be sure to be loud about it, and we'll try to get better.
Just for the PMs and that push the button on the cutting the GitHub releases.
Yeah.
That's when GitHub sends the emails out. And I know it's easy. Like I do it for my own pipelines, and it's lazy. You know, you put a blank template in there that says, "Hey, fill all this out," and that's what gets put. And then that's what GitHub emails out to all the watchers. And then you read it and go, "Guess I'll come back to this later when perhaps there's some content in it." And I don't know what I think our solution might be, you know, drafts versus final release, you know, and a human being changes it from a draft release to a final release when they put the notes in or something. Not sure. But
yeah, that is the correct solution. That's what we use on the Diego team. We make a draft release, and then I fill it in with the notes and publish it. So you only
and you can do that with the GitHub resource on Concourse?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that certainly the email out aspect of GitHub is my use case for finding out what's going on.
So that little nugget right there that you just said about the CF deployment not being the migration from CF release to CF deployment, probably not a good idea to try that yet. That should be communicated out a little broader, because the default response from a lot of people is, well, why aren't you using CF deployment? You should just be using CF deployment. And it's like, well, hold on. First of all, what is CF deployment and why should I be using it? I thought, like, this is a little confusing. Oh, that's what it is. Oh, and those kinds of things. So like a lot of the default responses from people when you're getting help is, you're using CF deployment, right?
So I think for new installs, CF deployment works. But if you're going from CF release to CF deployment, we've still got a ways to like smooth out and document that. I'll talk to David about sending a note around that.
Yeah. I mean, I think in general, CF deployment is not yet intended to be GA. Yeah. And they're getting it to the point where they have a more intentional release policy around it and documentation about upgrading between whatever they consider the versions of it to be. Yeah. So that you can use it to rely on having a long-running, stable HA deployment of CF. But it's not there yet.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I'm definitely gonna track David, and he already accepted to present. So it was more a matter of when. And I think what the team is saying here, that he wasn't quite ready. I think that's sort of part of the reason he hasn't presented. But hopefully next month we can see a presentation from him.
I've asked him, like, it'd be good to just talk about the current state and the plan, and put out timelines that he hopes to achieve. Just earlier, he doesn't have to be perfect, but he's a perfectionist.
It's probably also good for him to always keep selling us on why this is also good for us.
Yeah.
I've
worked with David. I've paired with him multiple times. Trust me.
I'm an old admin password kind of guy, and you know, this moving on to random invisible passwords is challenging. So you know, nice to have your hand held through the challenges.
Okay, so we'll feedback that, and I guess unless there are any other question about the projects, let me mention a few things about CF extensions. So one of the things that's been happening is the number of submissions to me. For people that want to have their projects in CF extension have started increasing. Obviously, sometimes projects, I redirect them to community if they're not looking for process or help and stuff like that. So you'll see that. So I would ask everybody else, if you have a project that you are considering adding to extensions, let me know. The last extension called, there wasn't a lot of people joining except for you and myself. So we kind of covered what was there, and the fact that you know, in some ways, you know, what projects do we accept and stuff like that. So if you have opinions about this, make sure to join subsequent calls. The next call I'm canceling because I'm going to be on vacation, but we'll have one after that. There is a couple really interesting projects that are coming down the pipeline. So, you know, make sure you join. I can't really mention too much there, but think, you know, Unikernel, for instance, there's a project coming up on that and stuff like that. So, let's see if there are any questions on this. No. All right, so I want to give as much time to the two presentations. As I mentioned, I'll repeat again, if you have a presentation and you haven't presented, especially and you're part of the community, you want to discuss it, let me know. Obviously, as we start getting a lot of these, I might have to prune them so that we get, maybe the presentations that would have the most impact to the community first. And we're starting to have quite a bit, so just let me know, ping me, and then we'll discuss it. So for today, we have two presentations, one from Altos and one from Stock and Wayne. We'll let Dr. Nick go last, since he probably will also finish the call well. So let's first go with Altos. I think Alex is there. He's going to talk about Project Mantra. So you can share your screen if you're presenting. So if you have something like a demo or some slides or whatever it is that you're presenting, you can pretty much click on that share screen button at the end. So let's give Alex about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll leave the rest of the time to Dr. Nick. So Alex, take it. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. So
hey.
Hope you hear me. Yeah.
Hey, Alex.
Yeah.
Nice to see you all here. I was very glad to be invited to this call, and I'm going to tell you about the tool to transform manifests that is called Mantra. So Mantra stands for manifest transformation, and it is used to ease work with BOSH manifests. The story began when we had a manifest with 5,000 lines, which we needed to transform to use in concourse. And I made a very interesting project by Dr. Nick that was called Make Me Spiffy. This project was able to split manifest in different parts, in several sections. And I liked the approach he had, but this project was not enough for us. For instance, we needed to detect certificates, to group the certificates, to extract them, and make more intelligent transformation of manifest. So the problem was that we were working with a manifest that was constantly changed. That's why we needed some tool that automate transformation of this manifest. And we created Mantra. In the beginning, it was a library written in Ruby. So now this is a gem. It was transformed in a gem recently, and to let you see what it does, I will have several simple examples. One of them will convert manifest of BOSH version to manifest of a BOSH version 2 using transform config, where you have all where you have a list of transforms. So you can tell that I have a section called jobs, rename it to instance groups, and so on. And you can call Mantra transform. Okay. Set manifest and transform config, and it will make transforms for you that are described in transform YAML file. Another thing you can do with Mantra is, for instance, is to merge some values to manifest releases releases list, and these releases are numbers, but you want to have all releases that start with CF to have latest version. So you can call the command that will do this. And you set up manifest file, and you say that JSON that you want to merge is version equals latest, and you set the scope or path to the release you want to update. And it updates all releases that start with CF. So you can find more examples of using this tool in the examples folder in the repository, and the test of the mantra is done in the way to use these files to run tests. So what you see in Markdown files are actually made as are actually run as a test, so you can be sure that they can be run. So this tool is kind of similar with BOSH CLI tool, which has ability to modify manifest with ops files, but we tend to have these tools in our pipelines as a Swiss Army knife that allows us to make more flexible changes, because ops files in BOSH CLI are made in a very clever way. It uses RFC, which stands for which describes how JSON, how YAML transformation can be made, and mantra is made for larger variety of tasks. For instance, it can be used to extract certificates and so on. So that's it for me. If you have any questions.
Cool. Thanks, Alex.
Good. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Let's see if there are any questions.
Is that MP3 a pirated version of Beyonce?
MP3?
Yeah, down in the bottom left corner. I don't speak Russian, so I'm not sure what you're stealing.
Sorry.
He's not stealing anything, Nick. No, it's not that. I think it's something else. I don't speak Russian either, but I don't think it's Beyonce.
Starts with B, and that's all I know.
MP3. Okay. I see what you mean. So it is taken from official site. Yes, it is not stolen. So.
Sorry, I just amused myself.
I enjoy this joke.
Yeah, that's right. This site is not accessible from US, so it wouldn't help you. But here it has. It is.
Sorry about it. It's just one of those things, when you see someone else's laptop and you just start looking around the tops and the sides and everything else.
Yeah, actually, this is audiobook of Witcher, which I recommend you to read if you like fantasy. And
it's all good.
All right. Any other questions for Alex that has nothing to do with MP3? All right. Cool. So,
are you able to easily add in the migrated from stanzas? Is that part of the? You know what I'm asking? So for the BOSH manifest V1 to V2 switch, you're probably also going to, if it's a live environment, you're going to want to add in the migrated from stanzas for, you know, like, do you have to go manually add those in, or is one of the hooks that you guys have for the manifest transformation allow for doing that easily?
Yeah, so this is a thing that is used to create to extract cloud config, for instance, from manifest of version 1. So, and that's the main, that was the main task for this when we started it.
Okay.
Oh, sweet. So again, this is on Alex's GitHub, and if you search for his name and Mentra, then it should show up. Okay, so now we get to hear why a Dingo ate Dr. Nick's work. So go ahead.
I have no answers to that. That is all highly private internal information. Join Stark and Wayne, you get to find out what happened with the Dingo. No, this is a Postgres solution, sort of, you know, batteries included, BOSH-based service broker, and there's a dedicated org just so we can keep all the repos together. There's the primary release that you can sort of start with, and there's a collection of repos that represent sort of a next version. So if you ever want to, you sort of walk through the code, just let me know and we'll do that. The core idea is, you know, having worked on many client projects, you know, huge ones, you know, from GE downwards, and you know, you just get this feeling that service brokers are trivial. That, you know, how hard is it to run Postgres or Mongo or whatever, and you know, the service broker API isn't complex. We don't really, even 5 years later, really expose much options of functionality. You know, there's no backup and restore hooks or anything. And really the service brokers you see pretty much take that, how hard can it be, and make really trivial brokers that don't do a lot. And but it turns out really after running the thing, everything else is really hard. And I went looking for my favorite visualization of how hard could it be, and it's the owl picture. This is pretty much how most people approach building service brokers. It's like, how hard, you know, you draw some circles and then just draw the rest of the fucking owl. But it turns out, you know, if you really want to build service experiences that match the complexity and the feature set and the horizontal scalability of Cloud Foundry, it is hard. And but also not just that, there are a lot of exciting ideas and features that you might want to add that just because the service broker API doesn't expose doesn't mean you shouldn't be offering them to end users. So part of this was me trying to vent and express ideas that we never really shared. And also, this is the experiences that, as a Postgres user, that I needed. So I'll share a couple of ideas. So this is the assumptions when it comes to building service brokers that I bring from what I've seen, both from 2 years at Engine Yard, where we had 2,000 MySQL databases for this is 2,000 businesses running, and then through all the customers that we've had and the tens of thousands of databases and apps and whatever, is that unlike say Diego or the normal runtime and Kubernetes and those sort of stateless environments, that databases always grow. They're like small children, and they want to take over the world, and they want to take all your stuff, and you have to look after them differently. 2017, we have Google, we have Stack Overflow, we have good Postgres documentation and YouTube videos, and for the most part, you know, devs can be self-sufficient, and so we kind of want to rotate the responsibility of DBAs from looking after single databases to being the overarching curator of hundreds and thousands of databases. And just to open your mind to what the goal is, the Heroku Postgres team, as a body of humans, hasn't really grown substantially over the years. But a few years ago, they went over 1 million databases that they manage. And so that, as always, I mean, they're an inspiration to our profession, and certainly heavily excited by trying to achieve what they achieve. Shared infrastructure, as much as the old DBAs of old always wanted dedicated machines because you get high performance, you know, we all know that there are other goals that we have when it comes to platforms. We're going to give up a tiny little bit of performance to be able to get a lot more orchestration, but we still want to bring in shared secure access, which is another story. We don't really have a good story around in Cloud Foundry. You know, what's a DB's role and responsibility? How do we let them through Cloud Foundry to be able to do their job? We sort of say, well, they get BOSH and they can touch everything, which is not the most secure story. So, and perhaps the most important story of every service broker and every database you ever do, and it's the last point, so I can belabor it, but really it's the first point, is that before you share it with anyone, all the operators should know how to do disaster recovery. And with more time, I would tell you my own personal stories of deleting customer data and feeling really bad about it. So it's a service broker. We only have the one plan because I've never figured out what tiered plans mean, like when it comes to quotas. What happens when you get to the end of your quota? There's no good story to tell that user about what happens. And of course, there are two levels of people affected. There are the developers who feel bad, and then the end users who now their web app doesn't work. So we're not working with plans at the moment. It's until we have a better idea of why you would have a plan for a database that only wants to grow. Fundamentally, how it works, obviously deployed with BOSH, but it's container-based. So when you deploy a new cluster, you literally get 2 dedicated containers running on 2 different machines on 2 different availability zones. And self-aware is probably overstating it, but a lot of the functionality is embedded inside those containers, not sort of centrally organized. So we just throw them up somewhere, and then we have a TCP routing tier. We need the TCP routing tier mostly, in my mind, because we don't have a good way yet in Cloud Foundry to update bindings. And so, we want to be able to do the failover and let all the bindings that we promised would work to keep working. It also adds sort of a DMZ isolation, which is another benefit. It's nothing fancy, it's HA proxy. So when we get the binding, obviously it's TCP, so we route through ports. So each binding gets a port. By the way, if Cloud Foundry did have like a shared service tier routing system, I would love to use that rather than have to implement one.
I think I can make some notes at the end of the presentation, but I can speak to that a little bit more.
Cool. Dimitri, I'm in SF tomorrow, so we can hang out if you want. If you don't want to hang out, just don't come to work. So then traffic comes in, inserts. It's asynchronous replication in its current incarnation. So after a while, enough inserts, enough edits, a 16 meg WAL will get forwarded off to the replica. Also after a timeout, like a 10-minute window of timeout, chunks will get sent off. And so replicas get replicated too, but it's not synchronous at the moment. And so they're always a little bit behind for the most part. And most importantly, we also send chunks off to the archiving system, which might be S3 or another machine. You can use SSH to send archives to a local on-prem machine. And when we know that we have that for every single cluster, we can do some fun tricks as well as the incredibly fun trick of disaster recovery. So one of the fun tricks we can do is create net new database clusters built on a clone of the backup of another one. This is space scoped because that's the simplest thing I can think of doing for authorization permissions of who's allowed to do it. And it kind of has 2 stories to it. One is it allows you, a developer or an entire development team to more thoroughly test the upgrade of production in advance of actually touching production. Because now you can get a copy of production, you might then sanitize it, and then you can test your upgrade. And you can test the blue-green deployment through the various phases. You can test both blue and green running against the old schema, and then blue and green running against the new schema. Check that it all works, perhaps before you find out what that looks like in production. The other obvious feature is you can, developers can actually do their own disaster recovery if they accidentally delete things. The way that works, because we have sort of isolated archives for each database, is we just copy the archive. It's pretty simple. And then when the new leader wakes up and he finds out that he is the leader, but there is an archive, it automatically kicks into disaster recovery mode, recovers the database, and then when the replica comes up, or when the next one comes up, it finds out that it's a replica and it starts replicating. So it's a really powerful feature built on the back of the same idea of containers that know how to recover for themselves. Cloud Foundry, so we create a new binding, therefore we get a new port and new traffic. And you might use that particular clone for minutes or hours or days or whatever. It might be a reporting database, it might be whatever. So it's an idea as much as an implementation.
What do you call it? One quick question. What do you call it? I guess I'm trying to understand. Is it more of a hot standby, master slave, or are you actually trying to like have multiple replicas across more than 2 AZs? The reason I ask is because like what happens when my connection went down and then there's 2 replica and they had different, sync update, which one do you use? Things like that.
I appreciate the question because the time I actually too slow to answer that question.
Okay.
So I appreciate your segue. So high availability, obviously, thanks to Dimitri's team, the entire BOSH universe is all its machines every week. And so we can't be at all oblivious to that. And then there's going to be environmental losses when people at Amazon use their power tools to take machines down. And so, we obviously have the replica. It is not just a passive replica. It's there constantly waiting till it gets its turn to be the leader. And so if the machine underlying disappears, there is a period of time where we allow it to come back. And that's, I believe, and I can be argued against, but the difference between high availability of when you've got an asynchronous pair versus durability of data is important to understand. You kind of want to wait for that leader to come back because it is the best qualified leader. It has all the data. So for the most part, we try to wait for that. The replicas will all give it some sort of timeout window to wait for it to come back before they trigger failover. But eventually, if you've got multiple replicas, they'll sort of compete based on best qualifications, who's got the most data. And so eventually it'll fail over, the routing table will get updated. And
how do you know that who's got the most data? I mean, maybe I did insert, delete, insert, and then some of them have some of those deletes, some of them have some of the inserts, right? Like, how do you know which one is the most current? Unless you're using
it's something of a solved problem in the Postgres universe. And so they coordinate through etcd. Arguably you can coordinate through other things. We're packaging etcd. So they sort of, they know each other's current status of where they're up to. It's a good question. It's part that I wouldn't claim to know the most about exactly how Postgres does that. And as by default, and we really only sort of we don't support only two node clusters. We don't really advertise how you get a bit more. There is a flag. You just pass through an extra parameter and you can have a 10 node cluster. But in the simple case, obviously, the other replica is the best qualified.
Of course, yeah.
But it is part of Postgres that the replicas can sort of know where they're up to, and then the agent that sits orchestrating it on each node, on each container, is able to figure out whether it's the most qualified.
Thank you.
It's really interesting. I would love in the future to get have the synchronous replication option, because obviously then the synchronous replica is inherently the most qualified, and it can be a lot more aggressive about failovers. So thanks to the wonders of BOSH, we actually bring this back. So if you've got familiar with the advanced functions of Diego, then you know too much. We don't do anything. we actually, it's super simple. In part because it's hard to make assumptions about state and what availability we have. So if there was space on that host machine for that container before, then there's space for it now. And so when that machine comes back, that container will be restarted. The container will sort of go through a role reversal. It will discover that it's no longer leader, and through sort of a stoneth, shoot the node in the head process, all its data is deleted off the machine, and it fetches sort of a new replica, either from the archives or from the master, depending on some characteristics. And now you've got a healthy cluster again. Healthy, you've probably lost some data though. That's awkward and no one really wants to talk about it. But that's the downside of asynchronous replication.
So I have a small question. What happens if the router fails, or how are the routers set up?
Yeah, excellent question. Again, I love it's the routing at the moment is a single HA proxy. So if it disappears, you lose your connections. I don't have a better solution for that. I'm completely open to solutions. It's just not. I haven't had. The team hasn't had a great idea for how you do that in the generic case, not knowing exactly what everyone's going to have on their install base. So it's super interested in ideas. Obviously, you can run multiple of them because they're independent from each other. A bit like the Go router system. You can run as many as you like; they're all independent. You then need a load balancer in the front. So hopefully, we can come up with a sort of suite of ideas.
So far, the best configurations that's worked well for that one is exactly what he just said. Is basically run a bunch of the routers and you have a load balancer in front of them. It seems to do well enough for high availability of this. So.
Each client have an in-memory Postgres, and then you keep local.
I mean, yeah, if you just use Mongo, then you can really just manage your expectations of everything. If you just don't assume that data is stored and you have no access to it, then I can make Mongo jokes all day. This story here, again, some of this stuff is not so much about Dingo, as cool as Dingo is. I really, when people went about making service brokers and service releases, that they had a higher standard of excellence that they started with. The 5-6 API endpoints on the service broker API is not the goal. That is a terrible starting point to assume. There is an entire experience that you should be thinking about, and perhaps this comes apart from my own personal experiences. But then I'd rather you benefited from my personal experiences than had to go through disaster, not recovering from disaster, each and every one of you. So I strongly hope that each of you, when you build service tiles, service brokers, service releases, that you have first and foremost in your mind what is your embedded disaster recovery story. So one thing we suggest of everyone that deploys this is, after you've played with it a little bit, to go through the disaster recovery tutorial. And that pretty much means running delete deployment on it, taking everything down and then going through and running the disaster recovery errand and feeling the confidence of it, watching it work. I think there's a lot of moving pieces in a complete Cloud Foundry experience, and feeling increasingly confident that each part works, or how to kick it when it's not working. We've all learned that the way to live with etcd is to know that you don't put anything really important in there that can't be reproduced from somewhere else. That gives you confidence. So knowing that you can rebuild this entire thing gives you confidence. So if you can't quite imagine what's going to happen, we're going to delete not just the containers, but obviously the broker and the router and etcd. We're going to delete all the machines. We use the word cell just sort of synonymous with Diego, even though it's implemented differently. So we take away everything. Obviously, we keep the archives. That's really important. Don't do this in reverse. Don't delete all the archives and think that you can. Actually, it would probably just reproduce all the archives. So it might work, actually. Rebuild everything. We bring back the empty machines. We bring back the router, the broker, and then you run the errand. And the errand is fundamentally simple. It asks Cloud Foundry for the list of service instances that it expects to be running. There may be archives for thousands and millions or thousands and thousands of historical databases, but you only want to bring back the ones that the Cloud Foundry expects. And so we just re-provision them. They all wake up with the same identity. The containers, goes down the nested chain. The containers wake up and realize, oh, I already existed once. I'll do disaster recovery. Then the replica containers wake up. They realize they're part of a cluster, and they start replicating either from the leader or from the archives themselves. That's ugly to put arrows in. And then because we made all sorts of promises to Cloud Foundry apps about bindings, about ports, about passwords, we have to restore those. So we put those in a different bucket. I have some simplistic security model here, just a different bucket, different credentials, and those credentials are never exposed to any of the databases. So if there is a vector of attack through Postgres, they won't get access to all the passwords and other material. But obviously, over time, we have CredHub will have different ways to do some of this stuff, and so I'm pretty excited about improving the security model over time. But yeah, this is the complete disaster recovery story. And whilst Dingo has it, I highly desire every single data service model, a data service broker to implement something similar, please.
And this is all open source, right? Needless to say, so people can look at what you've done and
yeah, some of the implementation is going to be Postgres specific, but the idea of having a run errand disaster recovery, I think should be a standard that people should aim for. At least to document, even if it's not as simple as that, document how do you do disaster recovery? It went all crazy. How do I get it back? It's pretty, Cloud Foundry is fantastic, and we can make it look terrible by having service brokers that misbehave. All right, sorry. I now have to watch the animations. I didn't mean to do that.
Okay, you have a couple more minutes if you can.
Sorry, if you're ever wondering, if you have to ever argue about Cloud Foundry versus OpenShift, you can always argue that OpenShift doesn't have Dingo. If you buy into what Dingo can do for you in terms of being there. Look, I went and looked at the Dayaz website, in part because that was sort of my former employer went and bought it. And it's still this magnificent website discussing their wonderful platform and not a cracker of a mention about durable services. So if we can solve as a community durable services, I think we have something that fleshes out the other half of the Cloud Foundry story. So it's not just a matter of having an API. I think we need to demand a level of excellence. Anyway, so some of this goes for other things, but the Postgres stuff is pretty much open source Postgres. You can get support for that wherever you find Postgres lovers. But
cool. So we have time maybe for one question. I saw one question on the chat about how does that work with Shield, which I think is also a Stock and Wayne project.
Yep.
So maybe if you have a quick.
So basically, it's just the same as any other Postgres database. With Shield, you essentially enable enable it as a target and source, right? Source and target, and you add a schedule, retention plans, whatever, and you have it backed up. There's no automated at this moment way to just back up every single database on Dingo, but it is possible if you need that. So Dingo handles the point-in-time disaster recovery scenarios and stuff like that out of the box itself, and you don't have to worry about those things. But yeah, if you want
old-fashioned backups,
yeah, for like compliance reasons or mandates or policy or whatever, then yes, Shield absolutely works for that. It's just a Postgres plugin basically, and you just configure it per database to do that. And it would not be too challenging to automate the addition of new, detection of new database.
No purpose. No need for it.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Wayne, for the answer, and Benjamin for the question. So, Dr. Nick, we appreciate it. This is cool stuff. I think Dimitri wanted to say something. Unless you can say it in like 30 seconds, DK, maybe we can do it next time about this.
Go, Dimitri.
No.
Never mind. Not enough time.
All right.
Oh. Sorry, Matt Damon, we didn't have time.
We'll get him to present next time, so you'll be able to flood him with questions. Anyways, thank you everybody for joining and for the presentations. This probably is the best turnout, so hopefully we'll get even more. Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah.